What is going on, guys? Jeff here, Mad Hatters Reef. Today we're going to be taking a look at the top 10 moderate lighting corals. But before we jump into that, if this is your first time being here, this is where I talk about everything reef tank related. So if you love the reefs like I do, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you can be notified every single time that I put a video out there for you. All right, so we're talking about moderate light corals. Now, what exactly is a moderate light coral? This is a coral that doesn't require a ton of light, nor does it require low light. It's right in the middle. Now, for those of you that tend to be a little bit more analytical and don't like brush overs like I just gave you, you can measure the strength of a light with a par meter. And what a par meter is a measurement of the photosynthetic active radiation of the light. Now, as far as par meters go, they are relatively expensive. They can go from anywhere as for a couple $100 all the way up to $500 or $600. You may be able to find a aquarium service company that does it as a service, or even a local fish store that rents one out. Anyway, getting this and checking out your par of your tank is very valuable information to know where to place some of these corals for the best chance at success. So we're talking about moderate light and the corals that do well in those situations. What is the range of moderate light as far as in reference to par? I would consider moderate lighting anywhere from 75 all the way up to 175 par. Now, in reference to what you're going to find when you have a par meter and you're putting that to work in your tank, depending obviously on the light that you put there, but a lot of the name brand decent lights that are out there, you're going to find that your sand bed up to the middle of your tank is probably falling in that range. So without further ado, let's jump into the top 10 corals that are ideal for that moderate light level. And kicking things off with number 10 on our top 10 moderate light corals, we have a scroll coral. A scroll coral is technically an LPS coral, and it tends to be a little bit more sensitive than its other LPS counterparts. But as far as par level for this guy, typically you're going to have them do the best between that 100 to 125 par. What I like most about the scroll coral is that its growth pattern is relatively interesting. It's kind of similar to what you get with a Montipora, but it doesn't grow as fast as a Montipora. So in a smaller setting, might be the ideal coral for you. Coming in at number 9 on our top 10 moderate level light corals, we got the good old-fashioned zoanthids. Now, zoanthids are one of those tricky corals that can really fall into a number of different lighting categories. The thing to look at with these guys is how they act with the light. A lot of times, if you find that they're kind of stretching out and you can see a lot of their stalk, there's a good chance that it isn't getting enough light. And then if you find that it is pushing down and almost looks like it's melting, it might be getting too much light. I find that zoanthids do best at that par level of 75 to 150 par. So that makes it a pretty good candidate for a moderate lighting situation. Coming in at number 8 on our top 10 moderate lighting corals, we have the Hydnopora. Now, this is a coral that is definitely going to do best on the higher end of the spectrum as far as moderate lighting goes. They are a SPS coral that has a very aggressive sting. So this is a coral that you want to make sure that you're giving plenty of space, so that is not going to be an issue for you as far as touching other corals, because they will nuke them out. Even though that we're talking about this coral on a moderate lighting lineup, this is definitely a coral that can cross up into the higher lighting realm of things. But being that it is a SPS coral that has a relatively interesting feeding response, for somebody that's looking to get started with SPS corals, as long as you fully understand that this is a coral that can cause problem with other corals, you will find a lot of success with the Hydnopora. Coming in at number 7 on our top 10 moderate light corals, we have the Favia. Now, the Favia might be one of my most favorite corals. As far as the growth pattern goes, it's relatively the same. You have that very reminiscent brain coral growth, but some of the colorations that you can get with Favias is just downright amazing. There's the Ultron, the Wolverine, the Yellow Submarine, the Dragon Soul. There is just an absolute ton of different types of Favias that have some of the most amazing colorations. As far as lighting requirements for Favia, they definitely are one that kind of sits on the lower end of moderate lighting. You can definitely even could consider this a low light coral, but typically I'm going to keep Favias at that 100 par mark, which usually for the lighting schemes that I run is about the sand bed, which is a really good location for this coral. So if you are a beginner and you're looking to get some amazing coloration in your tank, I would definitely take a look at the Favias. They're some of the most beautiful corals out there. Coming in at number 6 on our top 10 moderate lighting corals, we have the good old candy cane. The candy cane, even though that it doesn't have a ton of different variations as far as coloring goes, you usually have like a mint green, then there's like the kryptonite green, and then you have the purple. There's a few different variations of the purple and green. Some of them are just purple with a green mouth, and others are purple with pinstriping that's usually green. Those are probably my personal favorite. But candy canes are those beginner-friendly corals that are going to span the range as far as lighting goes. You can have them in a low lighting situation. You can also have them in a high lighting situation. But if you're looking for the sweet spot for candy canes, moderate lighting, somewhere in the realm of 100 to 125 par is going to be the sweet spot for this coral. And you can make up a lot of the lighting lack thereof lighting situations with supplemental feeding. These guys absolutely love AB Plus from Red Sea. So definitely a great coral to add to your tank. Check them out, the candy cane. Coming in at number 5 on our top 10 moderate light corals, we have the frog spawn. Now, the frog spawn is a coral that we haven't talked about a whole bunch on this channel, but it is a very interesting LPS coral. Now, for those of you that are new to the hobby and don't know what LPS stands for large polyp stony. Basically, it has a skeleton base with a large polyp on top. These guys do need a little bit of flow just so that they're jostling. You don't want them sitting stagnant because they'll look all blown out. But as far as lighting goes, this guy can get pretty low. You'd be surprised as to how low it can go. 100 to 75 par is going to be perfect for this coral. Going in at number 4, we have the good old Montipora. Now, as far as Montipora goes, there is a number of different growth variants. You have branching, encrusting, plating, also probably one of the more common variants that you'll see. And they come in a number of different colorations as well. They also have slightly different growth rates amongst the different species of Montipora. But ultimately, if you are giving them the proper water chemistry and good lighting, which this coral is going to ride on the higher end of the par requirements, we're probably going to keep, Montipora for the most part at 150 par or higher, and you will find a lot of success with this coral. Coming in at number 3 on our top 10 moderate lighting corals, we have Leptastria. Leptastria is a very interesting coral. Even though that it is relatively small in its polyp, it is actually a LPS coral and has a number of different color morphs. As far as the lighting requirements on this coral, they tend to like a little bit higher lighting. So as far as the moderate lighting scale from 75 up to 175, I'm going to keep this guy at the 150 and higher mark. Definitely a good fill in the blank coral. It isn't necessarily an encruster. It will kind of dome out, very reminiscent as to how acans will grow, which is, again, kind of going back to the whole LPS thing. Great little coral. Check it out, Leptastria. Coming in at number 2 in our top 10 moderate lighting corals, we have acans. Acans are definitely one of my personal favorites. It's one of those coral that there's a ton of different variants of, but doesn't have all the crazy names that come out with a lot of like something similar to like zoanthids. They are a LPS coral, which means large polyp stony, and they definitely are on the lower end as far as the lighting requirements go. I'm going to keep this coral anywhere from 75 to 120 par, and typically I'm going to place it on the sand bed. This is a coral that can benefit from supplemental feeding, and feeding responses in corals is always fun. So you can get that coral food in there and they will definitely benefit from that. And coming in at the number 1 spot on our top 10 moderate light corals, we have the hammer coral. Now, there's a couple different growth patterns with this guy. There is balling, which is just one big giant polyp, and then there's branching, which in my experience, branching is always the better option of the two. This is a coral that's going to do relatively well for beginners as long as they're on top of maintaining proper water chemistry. And as far as lighting requirements for this coral, they're going to do very well at that 100 par mark. I've kept them a little bit lower. I've also kept them a little bit higher. So it's a coral that can accept different varying degrees of lighting, but that 100 par seems to be the sweet spot. Hey, if you want to learn more about reef tanks, check this video out. I will see you over there.